Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the old captain coming to you live from Crooked Creek on a very special Monday morning. Today is December the 9th, 2024. And that may not be that significant to you, but it is to me because on December the 9th, 72 years ago, my father and my mother brought a little boy home from St. Luke's Hospital in Jacksonville, Florida. I was born 72 years ago today. And as I look back, when my dad was 72, I was 21. He was 51 when I was born, and I'm thinking, good gracious, I can't even imagine. I got grandchildren that are 26 and 27, so to have a 21-year-old son would be amazing to me. Be crazy is what it would be. But anyway, I've been really blessed, and I want to share a little bit about that as we go along through our lesson. One thing I'm going to do today, and probably be pleasing to a lot of you, maybe not, but I'm going to talk more and I'm going to sing less. We're currently in the book of Exodus, and most of you know that Exodus is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That's the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And the story of Exodus is the story of how God used Moses to lead his people out of bondage and out of slavery in Egypt. They had been there for many years, and he used Moses to bring them out of Egypt. And this was promised long before Moses. And I want us to look back in Genesis chapter 15. God is speaking to Abram, who later he called Abraham. But he's talking to Abram, God is, and he says, then he said to Abram, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them and will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions. So centuries before Moses, centuries before the writing of the book of Exodus, we find in Genesis where God made this Abrahamic covenant with Abraham and told him that his descendants would be captive, they would be there for so many years, but he would deliver them. So that's a done deal. God is a God of promises, and like I said, it was written many years ago. And then fast forward to Exodus, in Exodus 3:10, God sets Moses aside to be instrumental in bringing these people out. In Exodus 3:10, God says to Moses, come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Now, those of you who are familiar with the story, you know that Moses, he said, why me? I don't speak well. I've got a speech impediment. I'm not qualified. I'm not smart enough. What if they ask me questions I don't know? Basically, he was saying, I really don't want to go. Could you get somebody else? But God insists that he go, and he drafts Aaron, Moses' older brother, even though he wasn't the chosen one. Moses was the chosen one. He allowed Aaron to go to be his mouthpiece, so to speak. So God would speak to Moses. Moses would tell Aaron, and Aaron was pretty much the public speaker of the crowd. Well, in Exodus chapter 5, Moses and Aaron finally have an audience with Pharaoh. Now, Pharaoh is not his name. It's a title, like a mayor, or like, President Trump or whatever, Pharaoh and king are interchangeable. So if you see the name Pharaoh in the scripture in Exodus, if you see king, it's the same thing, same person. So this is their first initial encounter with Pharaoh. Verse 1 of chapter 5 of Exodus. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." You know, they weren't asking for a complete release at this time. They were saying, just let us go, 3 days journey, and have a worship service, so to speak, where we can worship our God, and let us go. Well, he says that the Lord of Israel says, let my people go so that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh says, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I don't know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go. So, a couple of things here. In those days, a Pharaoh was looked on as a deity. You know, if you had that title, if you had that kingship, you were looked on in Egypt as a god. And so Pharaoh's saying, who is this Lord that you're talking about? I don't know anything about him. I've Googled it, and I don't know anything about him. He said, who is he to tell me what to do? I'm Pharaoh. He says, I don't know him, and I'm not letting anybody go. Well, Moses probably thought that this was going to be a one and done. He thought it was going to be probably fairly simple, but that wasn't God's plan. God's plan, eventually it turned out to be like this. The God of creation, the God of the universe, Yahweh, versus the false deities of Egypt. And they would compete, so to speak, if you will. And at the end, God would show them who the true and living God was. Now, he wasn't going to do that on this first trip, because he had told Moses, he said, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. He's not going to let you go, but you go and tell him anyway. And so it was building up. It wasn't until after all the plagues and all that stuff that Pharaoh finally broke down and let him go. But by then, it was crystal clear who the real God was. God revealed his plan to Moses at the burning bush. Let's go back to Exodus 3, verse 19. He, being God, tells Moses, but I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not even by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders which I will do in its midst, and after that he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall be that when you go, that you shall not go empty-handed. Now, folks, that's almost a repetition of what God had told Abraham. He said, you'll eventually go, and when you go, you'll be carrying much goods. And so we see that will be coming to pass. I don't know if you've ever had a job where it was very difficult. If you were ever assigned a job that was very difficult, and it was almost more than you could stand. Well, I had such a job, and I'm going to tell you about it. It was in the winter, really about this time of year, exactly this time of year, in 1973. Ramona and I married between our junior and senior year at Berry College, and in those days we were on the quarter system at Berry, and we would get out at Thanksgiving, and we wouldn't go back until January, the first early part of January. So we had 6, 7 weeks out of school. Well, that sounds good unless you're married and you want to eat and you need some groceries and you need some money. So I had to find a job. Well, there was a seed mill there on the river in Rome, down at the end of Broad Street, Southeastern Mills or something like that, and they hired me for those 6 or 7 weeks. And I didn't know what I was getting into, but it became probably, without a doubt, the most physically difficult job I've ever had. And my job was, there was a conveyor belt, and there was burlap bags of hog feed, 100-pound bags. And they came around on this conveyor belt, and I caught them about letter high and had to put them 3-way on a pallet until you got 5 high on the pallet, which was 15 bags. And you just stack one across and 2, and then one across to 2, and then back that way, 3-way till you got 5 high. Then another fella'd come along with a pallet jack, and he'd move them out of the way and throw another pallet on the ground there at your feet. Well, we would run 800 or 900 of those bags a day. And it was okay as long as you kept up, as long as you could stay with the pace. And the person that dictated the pace was around the bend from me, and I could see him across the warehouse. He was an older black gentleman, had gold teeth, and he had a mouthful of tickets. And what he would do, he'd take that burlap bag, put it around a pipe, and as it come down, it would fill. He'd take a ticket, put it on top of the bag, and sew it across, throw it over on the conveyor belt, and it would come around to me. So he could kind of set the tone and set the pace. Well, I was doing okay until he picked up the pace. That was my first day. And all of a sudden, I was like Lucy in the I Love Lucy series, where they get behind with the candy and the cookies and stuff on the conveyor belt. I had bags everywhere, and I was having to pick them up off the ground and then stacking them, and here they come all along. And I'd look over at him, and all I could see was him smiling and grinning. Needless to say, I wasn't happy with him. The skin on my fingers pulled away from my fingernails because of that burlap. On top of that, we only had one car, so I had to walk home that day. All the time, just really upset with that fella and really more tired than I could possibly be. And I thought, how in the world can I do this task that I've got to do? Well, I went back the next day, and as I looked across the warehouse, the older gentleman went like this. And I walked over there ready to choke him, and he says, young fella, you're the first one. I said, the first one? The first one what? He says, you're the first white boy ever to come back. I said, sir, I had to come back. I said, I've got a wife. I said, we got to pay rent. We got to buy groceries. And by the way, our rent in 1973 on our apartment furnished was $90 a month. But you can't hardly buy a sack of groceries for that now. But immediately, I gained his respect because I came and did the tasks that I was called to do. Well, I'm not bragging on myself. That was just a necessity. I had to do it. And Moses was called to do a task. And one thing I have learned, and I think this is a good pattern, particularly for those of us adults, a good pattern to follow is for us to look back and to be in constant gratitude for what God has done for us in the past. Look back and be thankful for God's blessings, and look back and be thankful for what He's done in the past. Then We need to be looking forward to see what God is going to do in the future. Folks, God is sovereign. And as I look back over my life, I think I can see his hand through my whole life and how he led me here, he led me there, he led me here, he led me there. And looking back at the whole picture, I can see how wonderful he really is. This looking back thing, I think it's perfect. The perfect example, at least to me, is David the shepherd boy. You know, Goliath was taunting the Israelites, and no one would fight him. And finally, David, the little shepherd boy, he comes to King Saul. He said, I can fight him. And Saul says, son, he eats your kind for breakfast. He said, there's no way in the world. And David says, well, let me tell you what's happened. He said, I was tending my father's sheep, and a lion came, and the Lord had given me the strength to kill that lion. He said, another time, I was tending the sheep, and a bear came, and he said the same thing. And he said, the same God who delivered me from that lion and the bear will deliver me for this overgrown, uncircumcised Philistine. And he did. He did. He looked back. He realized his blessings in the past. He looked forward, and he thought, the same God that got me through that will get me through this. Well, folks, the same God that rescued me from that feed mill has seen me through many trials. He's seen me through the loss of my mom and dad. He's seen me through the loss of my grandmothers. He's even seen me through the loss of my precious son, Chad. And he knows the whole story, and I trust him with every fiber of my being. Well, that leads us to our Crooked Creek Hymn of the Week. And I'm going to read just a little bit of it. We've used it in the past, and I'm only going to sing two verses, but it's called Our God, Our Help in Ages Past. And the writer is saying, Isaac Watts is saying, that same God that was our help in the ages past is also the God of the future. He says, O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. I'm going to skip to the last verse. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, be thou our guard while life shall last, and our eternal home. Going to quickly sing just those two verses. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, be thou our guard while life shall last, and our eternal home. Folks, thank you for joining us for this week's Crooked Creek Hymn of the Week. I hope you've had a wonderful weekend. I look forward to this week and see what comes up. We are indeed on the creek. I'm rocking back and forth in my canoe. All we've done this morning is just come over from straight across from the dock. So just wanted to touch base with you and thank you for following all of our posts, but particularly on Mondays. They're very, very special to me, and I hope they'll become special to you. I hope you'll share this with someone else if you've benefited from it. But I do hope you have a great week and a great day, and I thank you so much for following us, and you take care, and we'll see you next time for the Crooked Creek Hymn of the Week. Take care, and God bless.